Ooh, what's going on, guys? It's Horse Beef here, and I'm bringing you another tier list video. It's been a while since I've done any of these tier list type videos, but I figured, man, there's not really much drama going on in the YouTube scene, but my eyes have been opened recently to the toxicity of certain fan bases, so that did inspire me to make a tier list surrounding the best and worst, I suppose, fan bases in the UFC. Now, of course, this isn't going to encapsulate the entire UFC roster because that would get pretty long, but pretty much just the main fan bases that stuck out to me when I think about the best and worst, mostly centered around the worst fan bases. So let's just get into it right here and start off with the Poetan fan base. Some people call them Poetards. I assume the ones who gave them the Poetard moniker would be Izzy fans. But I don't hate the Poetan fan base too much. I do think that they're a bit delusional at times, right? Because Poetan himself has been relatively fortunate with his certain stylistic matchups so far in his career, right? We saw him against Jan Blachowicz, and he didn't look quite as impressive as he has since then, being matched up against predominant grapplers. And I feel like Poetan fans don't really want to accept that fact, although I think, Poetan haters sort of rub that in the face of Poetan fans too much and use it as too much of a point. Although now that he's been matched up with Khalil Roundtree, a completely undeserved title shot, now I'm starting to see a little bit more of why the Poetan fan base is disliked by so many. So I'm gonna put his fan base in slightly bothersome, even though I consider myself a fan of his. I'm also pretty realistic in saying that he has been quite fortunate so far in his career with the stylistic matchups. But let's get into Nate Diaz, I guess. Now, this is just the Diaz army, baby. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm putting them right and not bad because the Diaz brothers are fucking OGs, man. And fans of the Diaz brothers, they're realistic. They seem to understand that both Nick and Nate aren't the best fighters of all time. Nick had so much potential that he never really got to realize. He walked so his brother Nate could run. But Diaz fans just love the Diaz brothers because they're just real dudes and they represent fighting in his purest form. And, even if his fan base or their fan base can come across as maybe delusional at times, I do think, a lot of the times it is just down to the memes, similar to a Chael Sonnen fan base that we'll get into pretty soon. But yeah, I'm putting them in not bad. I don't think they're really that annoying or that diluted. And yeah, that might be biased because I love me some Diaz brothers, but I'm keeping them there, and you can hate it all you want. Really don't give a shit. Conor McGregor fan base. Now, I think his fan base might be up there with some of the worst. I mean, to remain a Conor McGregor fan after all the pullouts, after his legacy has really come into question after all this time, so inactive. And really, when you get down to it, the resume on Conor McGregor isn't even that impressive, but you have people who are still saying that he's going to come back and beat this guy and beat that guy. Listen, Conor McGregor's not coming back and beating anybody, let alone coming back in general. I feel like his fan base is quite diluted, although I almost understand it because Conor McGregor is such an entertaining figure. So if that's the reason why you still follow him, I understand it. His Twitter antics, his social media antics in general, just being off the coke and doing wild shit, I understand. I do understand to an extent, but I'm going to stick his fans in insufferable. John Jones fans need some help, in my opinion, just like he does himself, to support this dude and prop him up as the GOAT and just essentially parrot whatever it is that Dana White says about John Jones. It makes no sense to me. The dude has done everything under the sun to have his legacy tarnished, right? You think about someone like TJ Dillashaw, tested positive one single time. Was it one time for the EPO against Henry Cejudo? So tested positive that one time and was essentially wiped off the face of the earth to most MMA fan bases. They just completely shut him out of the bantamweight GOAT conversation. I understand for good reason, right? But you need to keep that same energy when it comes to Jon Jones. This dude has done literally everything, right? Tested positive, cheated in the middle of his fights in many, many different ways, mostly down to the eye pokes, which is just such a dirty tactic, the way that he would just brush his fingers over his opponent's face. And like I said, I believe it was my last video, never once received a point deduction for it. You know, the wife stuff, the kids calling cops on him, hit and run with a pregnant woman, the cocaine, and I guess the cocaine would probably be the least damning thing that Jon Jones has actually been exposed for in his personal life. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, if you support Jon Jones after all this and maintain that he's the GOAT, the level of cognitive dissonance is insane that I almost admire it in a way. But Jon Jones fans do in fact need to get some help there. And then we get into the Khabib Nurmagomedov fan base. Now, I almost want to put them in the same spot as Conor McGregor's, which is pretty poetic, I think, because his fan base, it just pollutes every MMA subreddit known to man, spamming McChicken, your boy Tapped, McTapper, 29-0, never lost a round, never bled, and all this stuff. We get it, right? The record and the fact that he never lost a round, even though he did lose rounds, I'm pretty sure, maybe like 1 or 2 rounds, which is still impressive, don't get me wrong. But they just like to ignore the fact that his resume is nothing to write home about, and he just isn't the GOAT. He really isn't. You can say that he's the lightweight GOAT for sure, even though I think Islam Makhachev has surpassed him at this point. But the repetitive talking points of the Khabib fan base, it's just quite annoying. So yeah, I'm putting them right in insufferable, to be honest. And then we get Tony Ferguson's fan base. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put them in not bad. I actually respect the Tony Ferguson fan base because despite the fact that he's on like a 7 or 8 fight losing streak, his fans just love him so much. And they're also realistic about where he is in his career. They're not calling for him to fight again and keep fighting until he wins. His fans, I feel, are actually calling for him to retire out of love for him, and I actually really respect that. I do feel like they're very realistic about where he is right now. So yeah, man, I have to put them in not bad, dude. I respect the Tony Ferguson fan base, and you know what? I'm one of them, dude. I wish all the best for Tony Ferguson. He's done a lot for the sport. That prime El Kukui, like 12-fight winning streak, will never ever be forgotten. I just don't feel like his fans overstay their welcome. I have had some interactions with some rabid Tony Ferguson fans before, but at the same time, man, there are outliers in every community, right? But I can't use that to justify my placement for Tony Ferguson's fan base as a whole. I do think they're quite reasonable, so yeah, they are going to maintain the not bad spot. Chael Sonnen fans, I think I'll put them in the same spot because his fan base fully understand that he isn't the greatest fighter of all time. In fact, he's far from it. But it's just the memes, right? And I respect memes. I respect a fan base based solely off of memes. So Chael Sonnen's fan base, not bad at all, baby. Poirier fans. Now I feel like they're not bad too, man. I'm going to put them there. I'm putting them there. I'm actually surprised that this particular category has filled up as quickly as it has, or the fact that it's so much more filled than these other categories above. But believe me, there will be more bothersome, annoying, insufferable, and get help fan bases coming up pretty soon. But I just feel like Dustin Poirier's fans, they don't build up DP's legacy in a way that's unrealistic. I feel like they're just quite a realistic fan base, and just respect how much of a dog Dustin Poirier really is. He's fought the who's who. He is one of the greatest lightweights of all time, and you can't really take that away from him. Yeah, I feel like his fan base is not bad, dude. Israel Adesanya. Oh boy, especially after this Dricus du Plessis loss. Yeah, he has to get thrown right up there. His fans are some of the most fragile fans of any fan base of any sport I've ever encountered personally. You know, throwing around the term racist seemingly for any bit of criticism levied towards Israel Adesanya. So according to his fan base, he is immune to criticism. If you do criticize him, you are racist. While at the same time they ignore all the controversies, all the terrible behavior, maintain the stance that he's this humble champion, despite the fact that he is one of the worst winners in the history of MMA, at least that I've seen. I've never really seen somebody consistently take wins as poorly as he does. He just loves rubbing it in his opponent's faces. Zero class. Touches his dog's red rocket. You know what I mean? There are just many reasons to not support Israel. And his fans, they just have this victim complex just like Israel does, and I just cannot respect it. In fact, I've been on the receiving end of some of these outlandish claims of racism in my comment section as a result of covering Israel Adesanya on this channel. So I've experienced it firsthand, and I really do believe that Israel Adesanya fans need to get some help, man, because you guys are soft as baby shit. Fedor Emelianenko. Now, it's kind of hard to categorize his fan base. I might just put him in slightly bothersome, maybe. I feel like his fan base is slightly bothersome because if you are having the GOAT conversation, you'll always have one or two guys jumping in with, no, man, Fedor's the GOAT, dude. Like 9 years undefeated, and they'll talk about his gigantic winning streak. And of course, right, Fedor fans do have a point when they do talk about Fedor as the GOAT. Of course, he is in the conversation 100%, but I feel like his fans at times are a little bit too vehement in terms of how they push him as the GOAT. Like you're way too sure of yourself if you can say definitively he is the GOAT and there's no argument against it, because there is an argument against it, although I do see the argument at the same time, and Fedor is an OG, so I do respect the Fedor fan base for that very reason, but they are slightly bothersome to me. Ilia Topuria fans. Now, I don't really see a whole lot of his fans going around talking him up, saying that he's going to beat Max Holloway. I feel like it's a lot of the opposite going around, but I don't know. I don't really find his fan base to be that annoying. They're a little bit scarce. I consider myself a bit of a fan of his, mainly down to his fight style. The dude is just elite, right? So anyone saying that he'll knock out this guy easily, knock out that guy easily, I don't even really mind that opinion. I really don't mind it, because Ilia is super elite, and ultimately, I think he's honestly pretty disrespected as a whole. So I'm gonna actually put his fan base in not bad, dude. They don't actually annoy me that much. Max Holloway fans. Now, I love Max Holloway fans, myself included. I'm a Max Holloway fan. I love this dude. I think he's an absolute badass. But then again, leading into this Ilia Topuria fight, I feel like there is a lot of wishy-washiness going around within the Max Holloway fan base, because he lost those fights to Volkanovski, and then he was washed, right? And then he had a beautiful performance against Justin Gaethje. Now all of a sudden he's the best thing since sliced bread. He's gonna make it look easy against Topuria, which I don't really think is that realistic of a result here. I think ignoring how good Topuria is just because Max Holloway looked amazing against Justin Gaethje is very short-sighted. And I would say because of that, Max Holloway fans have become a little bit annoying as a result. Although it's not to the point where I can really rank Max Holloway fans anywhere above slightly bothersome. GSP fans, I don't actually mind GSP fans at all. I feel like if you're a fan of this dude and you call him the GOAT, you're absolutely in the right to call him the GOAT, because he very well is the GOAT. So yeah, I see no reason to really rank GSP's fan base anywhere above not bad. His fans, I don't think, are so bad, man. Alexa Grasso fans, now, I mean, they are men of culture, and they do have great taste, although they're creepy as shit, man. So I'm gonna put Alexa Grasso fans in annoying. They have these weird foot fetishes. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen enough when it comes to Grasso fans. They're a bit annoying. Anderson Silva fans. Now, I might put them in the exact same spot as Alexa Grasso. And that's coming from a fan of Anderson Silva. Growing up, he was my favorite fighter. He was probably the fighter that got me into MMA, at least being a super fan like I am now. Anderson Silva was really the guy that got me into it. Man, he was a beast in his heyday. Could not be beaten. The guy looked untouchable in his prime, right? But Anderson Silva fans, I feel like, ignore his lack of an elite resume and just call him the GOAT because of title defenses. Now, that is a huge argument when it comes to the GOAT debate, right? The title defenses and the win streak, right? Like the title defense streak that he went on, that was long and so impressive, right? With the performances, but he didn't exactly beat the greatest competition out there, and I feel like Silva fans tend to ignore that. and just throw in your face title defense, title defense, title defense, and win streak, win streak, win streak. You know what I mean? I feel like they're a little bit diluted in that sense. So yeah, I would consider them to be slightly annoying there. And then we have the Islam Makhachev fan base. Now, probably very similar to that of Khabib's fan base, but I feel like his fan base is actually more justified than Khabib's because Islam is simply the best fighter in the world. So everyone who says that he's the best fighter in the world are absolutely right to say that, right? There's no argument against it. And I don't see all these people, supporting Islam saying, oh, he made your boy tap, this and that, regarding Dustin Poirier. It really is just the Khabib fans because of the anti-McGregor fan base. I feel like Khabib and Conor are very similar as far as how their fan bases clash, and it reminds me a lot of Izzy and Poatan's fan bases. They just clash so much, and I feel like you can hate Izzy so much that you become a Poatan supporter. Same thing goes for like hating Poatan so much that you become an Izzy supporter. You know what I mean? And I feel like the same goes for Khabib and Conor, but with Islam, I feel like his fans, at least the way that his fans express their affinity towards Islam Makhachev, they're more realistic about it and they're more respectful about it, and they don't just throw around McTapper and all this shit, obviously, and you know what I mean? So they're less annoying, and he really is the best fighter in the world. So if you're running around saying Islam's the number one pound for pound guy, then you're absolutely right to say that, and I'm yet to find myself annoyed by the Islam Makhachev fan base, so I can only put him there. And then we get into the Charles Oliveira fan base, yet another fighter that I am a fan of. I guess I'm a fan of a lot of fighters, but I'm not like a Charles Oliveira super fan. But I've personally experienced comments claiming that if he gets another shot against Islam, he's making him tap it under a round. I feel like they're very prevalent on Reddit as well, similar to the fan base of Khabib. And ultimately, as much as I love Charles Oliveira, as much as I think he's an amazing fighter, his fan base, I don't know if they're joking or not, but to confidently run around saying that he'll make Islam tap easily if they fight again is just so diluted, considering how easily Islam seemed to beat Charles Oliveira. And then his fan base calls like robbery this, robbery that, like against Armin. I don't know. I just feel like his fans, they love him too much, and they consider him like the main character of life, and they live vicariously through him to the point where they just cannot accept a Charles loss, and they really do cope very hard after a loss for him. So yeah, Charles Oliveira's fan base are a bit insufferable in my opinion. Colby, Chaos, Covington. Now I'm not really too sure that I've really seen Colby Covington fans around much recently. I feel like his fan base is completely gone. I used to be a fan of Colby, mainly down to his trash talk and the whole like MAGA shtick that he was going with. I thought it was funny, man. I think Trump's a funny dude as well. So of course I'm not saying that his fans are annoying because they're MAGA guys, because I think all that stuff is funny. And Trump is an absolute boss, right? But I feel like being a Colby Covington fan makes little sense nowadays. He's kind of like ruined most of his credibility at this point as a fighter, right? And crying about the Usman fight, saying he got robbed here, robbed there. Like, really, you're crying because he should have got a draw against Usman in the second one. I mean, should have been a draw in my opinion, but at the same time, crying about that result, like he wouldn't have won the belt anyway. So just please be quiet. But at the same time, I don't really see Colby Covington fans around much. So I believe that he shouldn't be anywhere but slightly bothersome, because when his fans do come out of their little caves, they don't really make much of a stink, but then they do cry about the Usman results, which can get annoying because they're just so weird. And like the first fight wasn't really a bad stoppage. I mean, I believe he would have been finished probably in a more brutal manner if the fight had kept going, considering he had a broken jaw and all that. It was better for his personal health that fight was stopped anyway, So Colby fans, just relax. I feel like his fan base should revert into more of like a Chael Sonnen type fan base, and just go with the memes, just meme it up, and I would have no problem with his fan base whatsoever. And I used to be one of them, like I said, man. I have Sean O'Malley fans. Now this might be a bit of a surprising one for you guys. I don't actually think his fan base is that bad, because I mean, Sean is legit, right? He is one of the best strikers in the game right now, and there is a really good chance that he beats Merab in this one, right? I think stylistically he is a tough matchup for Merab, just like stylistically Merab is a tough matchup for O'Malley, right? It goes both ways in that matchup, so I don't actually mind all of his fans coming out saying that he's going to knock out Merab in one round, or Merab's going to run into a knee or something, because I can see that happening. I really can, but the only thing about his fan base that annoys me is when they come out and they say definitively that the Peter Yan fight was not a robbery, because, it was a robbery, man. It was potentially even 30-27 Peter Yan, but you didn't hear it from me. But I can't use that to influence my decision and put him at the Get Help or even Insufferable. But I will say that his fans are annoying just due to the fact that they all probably have broccoli haircuts and say bussin'. You know what I mean? Like they just seem like very new age fans. Like, to be a fan of a clown looking dude with all these stupid face tattoos, looking like a SoundCloud rapper, you have to be between the ages of like 12 and maybe 19 at most. So just by virtue of that alone, they are quite annoying. Although I just can't say that they're insufferable, because the arguments for Sean O'Malley are legitimate, because he is a legitimate guy. You know what I mean? Volkanovski fans, I'm just going to stick them right and not bad, right? That is the only fair place to put Volkanovski fans. He is probably the best featherweight of all time, and I haven't really seen a whole lot of coping since the loss to Ilia Topuria. I haven't really seen a lot of people saying that he should get the rematch against Topuria. They're actually calling for the opposite. They're saying that he shouldn't fight Topuria again. He should fight somebody else because they think he'll get knocked out. So yeah, man, his fans, they're realistic. They love the dude. And, I respect the shit out of Volkanovski, and I think his fans are actually very reasonable people, at least that I've seen. You might have had a different experience, maybe dealing with people on like subreddits or social media comments. I'm not too sure, but from my experience, Volkanovski fans are extremely, extremely reasonable. And then we have the holy grail of fan bases, of course, and that are Peter Yan fans. Goes straight in there. I mean, his fans, I just feel like they're like the full package, as people just probably extremely attractive, physically attractive, good-looking people, take care of themselves, and like they just know the fight game. They appreciate technique, they appreciate high-level skills, and they know that he got robbed against Sean O'Malley egregiously, and this man should be the reigning bantamweight champion, the bantamweight GOAT, with about 8 to 12 title defenses at this point, if his career went as it should have gone, and realize that he, skill for skill, is still the best fighter in the world, man. That's just Peter Yan, and his fans know it, and they're not insufferable. They're not even annoying, man. They're just incredible, Peter Yan fans. And this is coming from not at all a Peter Yan fan, as you guys know. I'm actually a Peter Yan hater, as you guys know, right? Dricus du Plessis fans. Now, his fan base is an emerging one. And I actually love his fan base because I'm a new fan of his, and his fans are not annoying one bit, right? His own fans know that he's a goofy ass dude and his fight style is weird and just looks like Donkey Kong on ice skates whenever he fights, and it's just a beautiful thing. And I do feel like his fan base is realistic. I'm not seeing anyone going around saying that he's the most technical fighter in the world. Nah, man, we're pretty realistic about what to expect from DDP, and that is just pure chaos and random button spamming. That's just Dricus du Plessis, man, and I feel like his fan base understands that, and they're realistic about his abilities, even though I personally think, as a DDP fan, I actually do think that he's a lot more technical than people give him credit for. I think his hands are more technical than people give him credit for. His lead leg is very, very quick and effective the way that he uses it, right? The lead leg roundhouse, whether that be to the body or to the head, he gets that thing up very quickly. And he's a great grappler, dude. DDP is for real like the most well-rounded fighter in the UFC right now. He might actually just be that. And you don't see his fan base running around talking about how he's like the number one pound for pound guy and all this shit. Even though he might even deserve being up there in the pound for pound like top 2 right now, if you really think about it, dude. Like if you really compare a lot of these guys racking up title defenses or racking up wins and climbing their way up in the pound for pound rankings, Dricus du Plessis might just be the most deserving one of being right behind Islam at this point. And I don't see his fans going around saying all this shit, building him up and hyping him up and everything. Nah, if you are a fan of DDP, then you're just a fan of him because he is a stand-up dude, and the man comes to fight every single time, and he really embodies that fighter spirit. See, I don't think his fans are that bad whatsoever, man. DDP's the dude. Sean Strickland fans. Now, I will say, I think his fans are a little bit annoying. I do think his fans are annoying, even though I do like Sean Strickland. And my girlfriend, her favorite fighter is Sean Strickland, so maybe I shouldn't be saying it, but at the same time, she annoys the shit out of me sometimes, you know what I mean? As women do. So naturally, Sean Strickland fans have to be put in annoying, and it does mostly come down to how they took the DDP loss. Like, I understand, right? Strickland was saying some very controversial things going into that fight. I get it, right? So I feel like his fans had that excuse just like locked and loaded if he was to lose by decision to just say robbery. The UFC didn't want him to win that title. But just watch the fight objectively and ignore the fact that Dricus looked worse off, right? Like, his face looked more damaged than Strickland's did. But at the same time, Dricus was landing bombs and getting off damage and landing good shots. You know, it wasn't a cut and dry decision for Sean Strickland. When I watched the fight live, I had DDP winning, and at that time, I was actually rooting for Sean Strickland. So objectively, I do feel like I understand, right? If you think that Sean deserved to win, but crying and saying that it was stolen away from him because the UFC didn't want him as champion because of all the things that he was saying, like, I agree with a lot of the things that Sean Strickland was saying. I really do. In fact, I agree with almost every single bit of it. But at the same time, crying robbery because of the result of such a close fight just makes you all sound like a bunch of whining babies at times, and it doesn't go well with the fan base of Strickland, right? Because doesn't Sean Strickland preach being a man this, man that? So stop being little bitches and crying about a close fight decision and just move on with your lives, you know? So I would say because of this, Sean Strickland fans are a bit annoying, although you guys can improve, and I know it, you know, as long as you start embodying this masculinity that Sean Strickland likes to push forward, you know what I mean? Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I might have to put Khamzat Chimaev fans in insufferable. He's bordering on get help. Honestly, no. I'm putting Khamzat Chimaev fans at get help. Y'all are crazy. I feel like his fan base might actually be the most delusional when it comes to MMA fan bases, maybe out of all of these combined. His fan base is so delusional to say that he's going to ragdoll DDP. He's going to ragdoll this guy. When has Khamzat looked impressive against high-level competition? He arguably lost the fight against Gilbert Burns, right? You can give 2 rounds. You can give rounds 2 and 3 to Gilbert Burns. You really, really can in that fight. Gilbert was landing bombs on Khamzat. And at middleweight, Usman took that fight on what? A week notice or something. I believe it was about a week's notice. Credit to Usman for that one. And Khamzat looked like shit in that fight. He honestly did. He slows down after the first round in all of his fights. And if you believe that he'll just steamroll Robert Whittaker and then do the same to Dricus because he was able to do that against Kevin Holland and Li Jingliang, I feel like you're just straight up delusional. This man is not a future champion, in my opinion. Of course, I could eat those words if he does eventually go and steamroll Robert Whittaker in the first round. But then there's just the extremely high chance that this man needs to be replaced going into that fight anyway. Now, of course, I don't wish anything bad to happen to him. In fact, I do feel bad for the guy. I don't like the fact that his career has been halted on multiple occasions by injuries and health concerns and all this kind of shit. I don't wish anything bad on him, but the dude also pushed out a crypto scam. How are you a fan of this man? I really don't understand it. Khamzat Chimaev fans are honestly in need of some serious help, in my opinion. BJ Penn fans, now I feel like his fans are slightly bothersome because I do think he's a legend and he is quite disrespected. And when people talk about some of the greatest fighters at lightweight, welterweight, they don't usually bring up BJ Penn, and I do think that he is deserving of being spoken about in those conversations. But then again, if you talk about his poor record, then his fans will have an issue with that and say, well, his prime was here and he just fought too far past his prime. But that is a factor, right? When you talk about the greatest fighters of all time, and that's the exact reason why, for me, BJ Penn isn't the best lightweight or welterweight of all time. And he's not in the Mount Rushmore of any weight class because the man just fought far too past his prime and did not take his career seriously. And I think his fan base, who push BJ Penn and say that he's this and that, need to consider the fact that he has himself to blame for why his legacy isn't where it could have been if he took training as seriously as he should have. You know what I mean? So BJ Penn fans, I do feel like they're slightly bothersome in that regard. Demetrious Johnson fans, now I find Demetrious Johnson himself to be a bit annoying when it comes to his YouTube channel and some of his takes. But no, his fans are pretty reasonable. But at the same time, they're slightly bothersome. They are slightly bothersome. You want to know why? Because Demetrious Johnson, as far as his resume goes, is not that good. He has a few very impressive wins under his belt, right? Like he has a win, two wins over Adriano Moraes in ONE FC, which is very impressive. I think Adriano Moraes would do well in the UFC. A win against Triple C and a win against Benavides, right? Those are good wins. But the flyweight division just really wasn't that talent stacked while he was at the top of it. I mean, like Ray Borg at one point was challenging for a title. You know what I mean? Like the flyweight division at that time, I will say it again, was not that talent stacked. Right now, the flyweight division is at its very best. So I actually consider certain fighters like Deiveson Figueiredo, if he stayed at 125 and he kept winning fights, then there's a good chance that he could have surpassed Demetrious Johnson, right? But now I feel like his overall legacy going up to bantamweight and having so much success up there, if he somehow captures like the bantamweight strap, that might actually put Deiveson Figueiredo ahead of Demetrious Johnson in the all-time GOAT discussion when you think about it. And then you have somebody like Pantoja who's just stringing together title defense after title defense in this more, as I said, talent stacked flyweight division. You know what I mean? So like Demetrious Johnson, is he one of the greatest of all time? Yes, he is, absolutely. But the ones who come out and say that he's the GOAT definitively and all this, like, yeah, skill for skill, he might just be one of the best, right? He's one of the most well-rounded fighters of all time, one of the smartest MMA fighters of all time for sure. But when you're really getting down to the nitty-gritty and talking about the resume of wins, it's not as impressive as his fan base might have you believe. You know, and then we have to get into the antithesis of the Jon Jones fan base, and that is the Tom Aspinall fans. And you know what? Y'all are okay. Usually the British fan base, really the fan base of any British fighter is quite annoying. But Tom Aspinall deserves every bit of the praise that he's getting. And I feel like we're just all becoming Tom Aspinall fans in spite of Jon Jones because we all want him to fight and knock out Jon Jones. You know what I mean? So I don't actually find his fan base to be that bad. Y'all are okay. In fact, I'm right there with you guys. Tom Aspinall is the man, and I hope that he knocks Jon Jones' block off, in all honesty. But that is the entire tier list, everyone. I want you to let me know in the comments section below what you think about my placement, what you think about the list as a whole. If you would agree, disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments section. And as always ask you guys, if you have any ideas of specific topics you would like me to cover in the future, just let me know, and I'll do my very best to get around to them as soon as possible. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.